friends, this is Hedda. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another reading journal video. Today I want to show you all of the spreads that I made in my reading journal for August and talk about all the books that I read. I actually read 6 books in August, so I'm considering August a really good reading month for me. And I also tested out a new format that I haven't tried before, so I'm really excited to show you. But before we get into that, a big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning platform with tons of classes on anything from animation and music production to web development, social media, and other things. You can find classes focused on creative career building, as well as classes more focused on honing your skills and learning new hobbies. On Skillshare, you can participate in as many classes as you want, and all the classes are conveniently broken up into smaller chunks, making it easy to follow a little bit at a time in case you have a busy schedule. One class that I found particularly interesting this month is called Mastering Adobe Illustrator: 10 New Tips and Tricks to Maximize Your Efficiency and Creativity by DKNJ Studios. I use Adobe Illustrator pretty much on a daily basis. So for me, this class is really perfect because I know that there are many things that I don't know already. I also think that the next class I'm going to check out is Home Interior Design for More Joy by Anna Marku, because I don't know much about interior design and I just moved into my apartment and it needs some interior design magic. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the description box will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. This is a really great way to explore and see what Skillshare has to offer and to give you a little motivational boost. Thank you so much to Skillshare for supporting my channel and for offering a really good service. And now let's dive into the books that I read in August. I really love my reading journal. I just think it's such a pretty journal, and every year around this time I start thinking about next year's journal. It's kind of weird because I still have like 4 months left in this notebook, but I still start thinking a little bit about my next journal and starting to wonder about things that maybe I want to change or things that I really like about the notebook that I'm using. And for this notebook, I really love the color. I love the size and the color of the cover, and of course I love the paper as well, but the color of the notebook is just really beautiful. But that's kind of besides the point. What we're doing now is setting up my cover page for August. So I like to have a cover page every month where I write down kind of a summary of the books that I read during the past month. I used to set up my spreads for the month and then make the cover page for the following month in these videos, but I changed it so that I'm actually setting up the cover page for the month after the month has already passed, because this way I know how many books I have read, so I can customize the page exactly to how much space I need on the right page for how many books I have read. Because what I like to do is I like to have the left page as kind of the main cover page with like decor, the title of the month, all of that, and then on the right page I have a list of the books that I read and of course the authors as well. This month I decided to use this kind of library looking card made out of craft paper. I have had this for the longest time. I think I bought 3 of these in like 2020 or something, like beginning of COVID. I have been holding on to the last one for a long time because I had 3, I used 2 of them. You will have seen this in my November 2021 reading journal video. And I've been holding on to it, didn't want to use it. Finally used it now. It was a good size for this month and I felt like it really fit the theme, because the theme I went for this cover page was definitely like cottage core but also library vibes. So I used a lot of my own stickers for this cover page. In case you didn't know, I have a little sticker shop where I sell my own stickers. So on the right page here, like the girl sticker and some of the book stickers and the square stickers, those are all mine. So is the sticker that you see on the left page here with the kind of mirror effect. That was a sticker that I made for my patrons for the Happy Meal that I to send out every month. And I didn't use it in my bullet journal for my September setup, so I really wanted to use it in my reading journal. And yeah, I just kind of built the whole theme around that. I'm using some washi tape from Notebook Therapy and some stamps from Notebook Therapy, like the bookstore and bookshelf pet tape. That's from Notebook Therapy. It's from their Our Stories set, which is just really pretty and perfect for a reading journal because it's focused on kind of vintage books and bookstores and old books, all of that. And I love that for my reading journal. I also use some random scrap paper, some from old books, some from Paper Monogatari, just some like small pieces that I have left because I like to use all of the paper if I can. I hand lettered August with an orange brush pen because there's a lot of like brown tones in this spread, but I wanted to bring in some of that orange because there's orange in the oval sticker on the left page, and there's also a little bit of orange and red on the right page. So I wanted to bring all of that together with the title, and this way the title is also very visible because there's a lot going on the spread and I didn't want the title to kind of disappear. I'm filling in the library card at the end of the video after I've made all of the spreads for the books that I read. I'm not quite sure why I didn't do it right away, but I guess this way there won't be any spoilers for you guys for which books that you're gonna see in this video. And that was pretty much all for the cover page. I did do a few like sparkles with my brown gel pen, and now we can move on to the first book that I read in August. And for this spread I used some stickers from Junni, like Junni-san Studio. You might know her from YouTube and from Instagram. She has taken quite a long break now since she had her baby, understandably, but I still love all of her art and she's so creative. And actually one of you guys gifted me these water lily stickers last year and I haven't used them, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity because I love green and pink. Maybe I've had a green and pink spread like every month in my reading journal so far this year. But it's just a really pretty color combination. And I also got out some pet tapes that I was gifted in pen pal letters. I have no idea where these are from. I'd actually never seen them before, and these are just like a few samples from a pet tape roll. So I combined those with Junni-san stickers so that there's a little bit more going on. And I used some washi tape. The pink one is from Notebook Therapy. I'm pretty sure the set that it came in is not for sale anymore. It's a pretty old one of the first washi tape sets that they ever released. And the green one I received in a pen pal letter, so I don't know where that one is from, unfortunately, but I've had it for quite some time and I really like it because it's very subtle. It has a pattern on it, but it's very like thin and dainty strokes. I just built this spread by kind of starting in two corners, like the bottom left and the top right, and kind of just built it from there. And the first book that I read in August is called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This came out a while ago. It is like a prequel to the Hunger Games books. I didn't want to read this when it came out. I was like, oh, I don't really care. It's about President Snow as a young man. What could be worse? But then it showed up on my Audible. I had an extra credit and I was like, maybe I'll just try it. And I feel very conflicted about this book because the story was very exciting. It was really interesting to read about what their society had looked like, how he became who he is, and here comes some spoilers, so I'm gonna put a notice in the video and then you can mute and then unmute once it goes away. This whole time Snow is like falling in love with this girl, right? And she's a tribute and he doesn't want her to die, and he like slowly falls in love with her. And I just feel like it's so unrealistic that she would reciprocate his feelings. Like, she's from the districts and she's being thrown into the Hunger Games. How would she fall in love with this guy? And then all he does, I don't know if I'm like damaged, but I kept thinking that it would all be a lie, that she had just pretended, because that's what made the most sense to me. And I guess after reading so many books, I'm kind of expecting some kind of plot twist like that. But he is just fantasizing all the time about, oh yeah, when we're together, we're gonna do this and that, and she's gonna do this and that because she loves me and blah, blah, blah. And like, He just sounded so naive and delusional the entire time, and I was just really annoyed with him. But then, like, towards the end, he just really shows his true colors and show what kind of maniac he is, because his solution to his problem is to just kill her. And so I guess in a way that was the plot twist, because I kept thinking that he was just a naive, stupid little boy and that he was gonna feel betrayed by the love of his life because she had only pretended to like survive, and that would be the twist in his life that makes him like go rogue or whatever. But it turns out that he was just crazy all along. And maybe she did just pretend, because we never really get to know that. Maybe she did pretend and it wasn't real. Spoilers over. One thing that I see a lot with people reviewing books is that if they don't agree morally with the main character, they don't like the book and they think that the author is maybe pushing a certain agenda or whatever. I think that books can just be written about bad people and just show what these people do without the author saying that this is wrong or this is right. I have never read Colleen Hoover, but I have read a lot of reviews of her books for some reason. And many of the complaints about her books is that characters in the books do bad things or do unhealthy things in relationships, and they equal that to the author saying that that's the right way to be in a relationship, or that that's like some agenda that that author is pushing or saying that is a good thing, or romanticizing it or whatever. I can't speak for Colleen Hoover because, like I said, I know nothing about her. I've never read any of her books, but I'm using her as an example because so many people are complaining about her books in that way. I think that an author can write a book about characters who do things, and the author may not agree with those things or say that those things are good or bad. It can be the main character or it can be someone else. And I don't think that an author is necessarily pushing a certain agenda. I think that they can just create a story, and it is a story and it's on its own. And I think that The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is like that. It's about a bad person, and there are many bad people in this story. Really, none of them are without flaws, but that doesn't mean that Suzanne Collins thinks that Coriolanus Snow has a healthy relationship with like any of the people in his life. Anyway, that's a little rant. It got too long for the video, so I just had to pause it for a sec. It just annoys me a little bit when people say like, oh, I didn't like this book because the main character behaved badly, or the main character did something that I don't agree with on a moral level, because I don't think that that's what books are about. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the next book that I read, and this one I read on my Kindle. I wanted to use some of the Hinoki Into the Wave stuff from Notebook Therapy because this like wave pet tape is just really pretty. So I wanted to use that here, and I combined it with some girl stickers and some like kind of stickers from the other pet tape from the set. If you ever want to get anything from Notebook Therapy, you can get 10% off with my code mochibujo10. There are also links and more discount codes in the description box below. This spread I split into two. So I framed both of the pages and then I just wrote on the inside of the frame. This book is by Holly Black and it's called The Cruel Prince. My friend recommended me this book, and I have seen it on lists over like one of those gateway books into fairy romance fantasy books. But I never read it before now. To be honest, it wasn't my favorite, but that could also just be the curse of the first book in a trilogy, because in the first book there is a lot of info to convey and you have to really set up the world, and there's a lot of things you need to teach and show the reader as an author. So that's the problem I have with a lot of first books in series, that there's a lot of information dumping and then the story kind of lacks from that. That's not always the case though, but I felt like this for this series. It was the same with Throne of Glass for me. The first book was like, but then the series got really good. I liked the like tension between the characters. This book really like throws you in there right away. Like within the first 2 pages, the main character's parents have been brutally murdered. And that's Not even a spoiler, because it's literally there on the first page. And it felt very intense and fast-paced in the beginning. And then there was like, the middle was kind of slow, but things were still happening. But there is so much that you don't know about this world as a reader. And the world also feels very small. Like everything happens in this one small area, which I first imagined as a lot bigger. But then I was thinking that these are all just big estates and you can walk or ride a horse to all of them. So this is just like a small area with like castles. I like the politics part of this book because I really like fantasy that also braids in a lot of political intrigue. I like political intrigue in my books. And so that part was interesting. At the end though, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars because it didn't capture me that fully, but I think maybe once I read the second book, which I haven't started yet, I think that it will get more interesting probably. And I think that the first book ends on an excellent cliffhanger. I also have to say I really enjoy books where the main character is morally gray. I really love the idea that the main character could be the hero or they could be the villain. And when you finish this book, you don't really know if Jude is good or bad. For the next 4 books that I read in August, I feel like I need to explain myself. You guys might know that I had a scare with my cat. I was told that I needed to put him down, and then it turns out we didn't have to put him down and he was actually fine. And it was really sad and really scary, and I grieved beforehand, like knowing that he was going to be put down in a few days. It was really hard. When things get difficult for me, I seek to books and movies and TV shows that I know are good and that I know that I like and fills me with this feeling of comfort. So what happened to me was I was really sad in August and I turned to A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have already read these books twice. I have made spreads in my reading journals for these books. I read them the first time in 2021 and then 2022 and then now 2023. The first time I read these books, I listened to the audiobooks. The second time I read the books physically, like I bought the physical copies of the books. Although the second time I only read the first 3. The first time I read them, I read all 5. But this time I listened to the dramatized versions. And this was a whole new experience for me. In Norway, we have something that is called hørespill or radioteater, which is just what it sounds like, radio theater. It's not a podcast and it's not an audiobook, but it's, you know, people talking and there are sounds and just kind of creating this atmosphere. And if you close your eyes, you can kind of imagine that there's a movie happening, you know, and you can kind of imagine it in your brain. And that's what this dramatized reading of the books are. So all of the characters are played by different voice actors, and there is a narrator. Like in the case of the first 3 ACOTAR books, Feyre is the narrator and it's from her perspective. So she uses like first person, I did this, I thought that, or blah, blah, blah. So it works really well as a dramatized version because she is there's the same voice actor who is the narrator and the voice of Feyre. Really liked that. So throughout August, I managed to listen to the first 4 books, the dramatized versions. I ended up buying lots of credits on Audible because that's where I listen to audiobooks, because these dramatized versions don't come as one book. I think the first one was 2 parts, the second book was also 2 parts, and then the third book was 3 parts. So that's already 7 credits on Audible, and then I also read the 4th book, so that's 8. Yeah, so not a great month for my wallet. with audiobooks this month, but it did have the desired effect. I felt like I could really be in the story and really immerse myself in the story, which was exactly what I needed, because I needed an escape from reality because I was really sad and I just couldn't deal with my cat being put down. So yeah, I made 4 spreads in my journal for these books. It was actually unintentional, but it ended up following the 4 seasons. So the first spread is like spring themed because I used some of the stamps and washi tapes from Notebook Therapy and also some of the remaining stickers from the pet tape that I used for the A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes spread earlier. And then for the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, I used stickers and stamps from the Midsummer sets from Notebook Therapy, and I also combined it with some floral pet tape. And when I turned to the next page, I was like, I've already made spring and summer, so why not continue with fall and winter as well? So that's kind of what I ended up doing, and it was quite fun. It was like a fun little project. The 4th ACOTAR book is called A Court of Frost and Starlight, and I remember the first time I read it, I was like, this is a total filler book. It feels so unnecessary. This is like a Christmas special of the ACOTAR series. But in a way, it's like a prologue to A Court of Silver Flames, which is the 5th book in the series. It's not a skippable book. Like, you have to read it. If you're gonna read the 5th book in the series, you have to also read A Court of Frost and Starlight, I think, because it really sets the scene for the 5th book. And because I was feeling so immersed in the story, it didn't feel as out of place this time when I read it or listened to it as it did the first time. But we're still on the second spread here, A Court of Mist and Fury. This used to be my favorite book in the series. Like, the first time I read the series, this was my favorite. Now though, I think my favorite is A Court of Wings and Ruin, the 3rd book. But I also really like the 5th book. And I am really excited to listen to the dramatized version of the 5th book as well, but the second part hasn't actually come out yet. Yeah, A Court of Mist and Fury gets 5 out of 5 stars for me. It is a great book. It is better than the first one, and the dramatized version was really, really good. Although I have to say, like, some of the spicier scenes were sometimes a little bit odd, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. So book 3 was in 3 parts, which is understandable because it is a long book. A Court of Wings and Ruin. I did a fall theme because, you know, like I said, following the year and the seasons. I was in a very dark place while listening to these books, like I mentioned before. I'm not usually someone who cries at books. Like, I will feel the feels, but I won't like cry. But this time I did. Towards the end of A Court of Wings and Ruin, I cried. It was a good thing. I probably needed it because of the cat, you know. So it was a good cry, and it is a book worth crying over, I think. Maybe that's also why this is now my favorite book in the series, just because of the feelings that I have attached to it now. I don't know. But it worked really well as like an emotional support book. And then A Court of Frost and Starlight, I was like, you know, if I'm gonna also listen to the 5th book, then I need to listen to A Court of Frost and Starlight as well. So I did, and it wasn't terrible. It really wasn't. It was quite sweet in a way. It was really nice because the characters that have been through so much over the course of the 3 first books, they finally get to live kind of at peace and have more of like a regular daily life. The things that have changed within them over the course of the first 3 books, they get to kind of come to terms with that. Of course, there's a 5th book because Nesta can't come to terms with who she has become. And I actually started the 5th book as well, but then I realized that only 1 part has been released. And I didn't know this, but the people who make these dramatized versions of the ACOTAR books, they're releasing 1 part at a time. And so part 2 is coming out in October, I think. So I'll probably listen to part 2 then. But I don't know how many parts there will be, and maybe, I don't know if there will be 2 or 3. Hopefully it's just 2. I know that I'm talking about this series as a whole in this video and not really each individual book, but I think you know, because I read all of them during August, it just makes more sense to me to talk about them all as a whole. And while listening to these books, I was like, maybe I should read Crescent City again, because there is a new Crescent City book coming out in January. And I thought that maybe it would be nice to read the first and second books in that series too, because I've only read them once. It hasn't been that long though since I read them. It was like last year. But I still want to. And that also made me want to read Throne of Glass again, because I've only read that series once as well. I never read the short stories like Assassin's Blade. I never read that one, so maybe I should read that. Once I got towards the end of the Throne of Glass series, I realized that I should have read Assassin's Blade because of all of the characters that suddenly appear out of nowhere. But if I had read Assassin's Blade, it wouldn't be out of nowhere. So Assassin's Blade is to Throne of Glass what A Court of Frost and Starlight is to the ACOTAR series, I think. So I don't know, I might just reread everything from Sarah J. Maas at this point. I don't want to only read those though, and if I do end up reading everything again, I will probably only make single page spreads for them like I did here for the ACOTAR series, because I don't think I want to make full spreads for them since it is the second time I've read them and I have full spreads from them from before. So that's kind of how I'm thinking. And I don't want my reading journal videos to be all Sarah J. Maas for the rest of the year either. So there will be a lot of other stuff. I already have a little list that is like a smaller list where I've collected books from my TBR that I think I want to read this fall. And for October, of course, I'm reading spooky books only, and maybe part 2 of A Court of Silver Flames. I will say though, I am in this like rereading phase, because I am rereading some other books that I read as a child, and it's just so comforting. I don't know what it is. I just need the comfort right now. Even though it turns out my cat was fine, there is something psychologically happening in me at the moment that causes me to move towards rereading books instead of reading new books. But I should tell you a little bit about what I'm using in these spreads. So I mentioned earlier that the first and second spreads I mostly used washi tape from Notebook Therapy, and then for A Court of Wings and Ruin with my fall theme, I used a washi tape from Paper Monogatari and then one from Marigo Nasuli Art. Actually 2 from Paper Monogatari, and then I used one from Notebook Therapy as well. And then some random stickers and pet tape that I've received in pen pal letters, and a pumpkin spice candle sticker that is from Vinca. And then for A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is winter themed, which worked out perfectly really, like A Court of Thorns and Roses being spring themed and A Court of Frost and Starlight being winter themed was actually perfect, and it wasn't intentional. But here I used some of the winter like moonflower tapes from Notebook Therapy, and then I used some stickers that I got in Japan, and they are kind of blue sky themed stickers, like different objects but in sky colors. And for all of the titles on these spreads, I used the typewriter alphabet stamps from Notebook Therapy, and I used different colors to stamp. For A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Wings and Ruin, I used my brown stamp pad, and then for A Court of Mist and Fury, I used a purple stamp pad, and for A Court of Frost and Starlight, I used a blue stamp pad. Because it was just one page for each book, I didn't want the titles to be too overwhelming and take up too much space, so that's why I used the stamps. Because they are pretty small. They're not really header material usually, but in this case it worked really well because they were the perfect size, and it allowed me to write everything that I wanted to write about these books because the titles were so minimal and because I didn't have that much decoration on each spread. If you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses and the whole series, I would recommend you reading them. I really think that it's worth a read, and you know, if you get sucked into the world of Sarah J. Maas, you know, don't blame me if you end up reading all of Throne of Glass and Crescent City as well. It's just how it is. You start with ACOTAR and then you read Throne of Glass and then you read Crescent City and then you do it all over again. Turns out that's what's happening to me right now. So that was all of the books that I read in August. It's not very often that I read 6 books in 1 month, but it really helped that 4 of them were dramatized audiobooks. So here we have a little flip through of all of the spreads that I made. I actually really like all of the spreads that I made this month. I think what really helps me enjoy my reading journal so much is the lack of pressure. There is no formula that I have to follow. I just do whatever feels right. It's completely free from any type of pressure, which is really nice. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you watched this video all the way to the end, put a cactus emoji in your comment to let me know. And if you like what you saw here or heard, I know a lot of you guys sometimes just listen to my videos. You should watch them too, but it's okay if you like listening to them. Please consider subscribing because that helps my channel grow, and definitely click the like button so that maybe YouTube will show my video to someone who has never watched a video from me before but are really interested in books. And I think that's all from me today. A big thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Make sure that you check out that link in the description box for a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. Thank you again so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you. I hope that you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!